Good day, everyone, and welcome to Experiential Learning Lesson 5. The lecturer for today is Angelique, and I will be guiding you guys through Lesson 5 and 6 this week. So just a few reminders. Please ensure that you attend your weekly contact sessions as timetabled. The formative brief can be found on the Cole campus. The sooner you start, the better. The usual reminder of your 80 hours of internship. Please ensure that you start looking for an internship as soon as possible. Okay. So before we move on, we'd just like to make sure, have you completed the following activities from previous lessons? Have you created and discussed your LinkedIn profile? Have you completed the CV and cover letter for the job application? And have you discussed formative assessment 1? If you haven't completed any of these, please take a moment to discuss with your lecturer or to contact us and complete these. So the objectives for today are the awareness of others' perspective, perceptions, and experiences of the interview. Second one will be consider what others deem as professional during interviews, take on responsibility of self-improvement in interview skills, understand the importance of professionalism during interviews, and understanding how others' perceptions and experiences can influence our own perception and experiences and how we manage these in the workplace. So we'll just be doing a previous lesson recap, as this is the last lesson of this chapter. So in the previous lesson, we looked at the interview process. So we covered obviously applying for the job, attempting to get the job, and then we started with the interviews. We first looked at the screening call. So this is usually the call that is made before you are invited to a formal interview. This call could be to just clarify which job it is, which industry it is within, and which company it is, because when you're doing multiple applications, sometimes you can lose track. Also, sometimes it may take some time for companies to come back to you, and you may have forgotten about your application with them. This is also to double check that you are still seeking employment and that you are available for an interview. During the screening call, you will then set a time for your interview, and you will agree as to whether or not it will be face-to-face or over Skype or Zoom. During these types of calls, ensure that you are on your feet. So if you're busy driving, please inform them that they can call you back in 20 minutes or that you'll give them a call back. Obviously, that's for safety reasons and also to be professional on the phone because you do not want to be distracted. And then also, if you are unsure of when you are available, just tell them that you will contact them or to call you back in 5-10 minutes, and you'll be able to give them a time. Okay, then you'll move on to the first interview. So the first interview is a face-to-face interview or Skype or Zoom due to COVID regulations. It's all dependent on the company themselves. So this will be an informational session about the job and the details of the position. It's very much fact-checking, checking up qualifications and things like that on your side, and obviously them informing you from their side. So obviously, depending on the company and how their HR would like to go about their interviews, you can go for one interview and that could be the decider, or you will go for multiple. So in this interview process, we'll be looking at multiple interviews. So the first interview is slightly more in depth about the job itself, not necessarily about you, and they just get a feel for you and they fact check your CV and things on your side. And then you will move to the second interview. So the second interview is more competency orientated and other faculty members may sit in. It could then possibly lead into a panel interview, which is multiple people interviewing one candidate, or it could just be one or two people from HR or within the same faculty that you'll be working in that will be interviewing you. So this is then more in depth about you. They may ask you more technical questions depending on what type of job it is and etc. So after the second interview, you will then move on to the third interview. So again, depending on how companies and businesses would like to structure the interview processes, some may do it in one interview, some may do it in two, some may do it in three. So during the third interview, it may be more informal, more in a social interaction kind of situation, social gathering. So this is to see how you integrate with other faculty members and how you socialize, especially if you're in a very social role such as sales or anything like that. You want to make sure that you're able to integrate into the company and into the company culture, because each company is obviously different. So this is usually considered the determining interview. So if you are able to integrate well, directors, board members, etc., take a liking to you, this is usually your first meet and greet with everyone that you'll be working with, reporting to, or who will be reporting to you. So again, more members may join this interview. As I said, it could also be in a social setting. If this interview is a little bit more formal, then they may also ask you to complete an on-the-spot skills test. So do not be deterred when this comes up. It is usually just a basic skills test depending on the job, and it is usually orientated around the job, or they would like to see what other skills you have so that they can integrate you further into the company if need be. So once that's complete, you will then either be successful with the job application or unsuccessful. If you're successful, they will then send you on a contract and make an offer. This is where negotiations for obviously financial compensation will happen. Ideally, you don't really want to bring it up in an interview, even in the third one, unless they bring it up. Then of course take their lead and discuss it within, you can gauge as to whether it's appropriate or not and things like that. But usually you would only do income negotiations and discussions when you've been successful with the application and they have given you an offer. Okay, so in the previous lesson, we also looked at the STAR interview response method. So this made use of the situation. So when responding to specifically behavioral or situational questions with an interview, you would then start with describing the situation that you were in. It's also like if you had ever been in certain situations, if they ask you, have you ever dealt with a colleague and this and this and this, this is how you would answer the question. So you'd first describe the situation that you were in. You would then describe the task that you needed to complete during that situation. You would then explain the actions that you took in order to complete the task. And you would then, of course, conclude with the result of your task. So this could usually be looked at when colleagues are in distress, be it personally or anything like that. How do you handle the situation with regards to comforting them or anything, or encouragement or anything like that? It's all dependent on the question that the interviewer asks you, obviously. Okay, moving on to interview preparation. So again, this is just a quick recap. So your appearance, of course, your appearance is the first thing that anybody will see, be it on a Zoom call or face-to-face or anything like that. Make sure that you are clean, you are well groomed, you're dressed appropriately. What you can also do is you can follow up with the company to see what their dress code is so that you can dress accordingly. And then when you're doing a Skype or Zoom interview, please ensure that your lighting and sound is working. You can go into the lobby before the interview starts and there are testing options on there. So please ensure that there's good lighting onto your face. Ideally not have lighting coming from the back because that will create a silhouette. And then obviously COVID awareness. So again, this can go hand in hand with the Zoom and Skype interviews because then it is social distancing. Also with regards to keeping your mask on and greeting when you go to face-to-face interviews. Don't be discouraged if they don't shake your hand. Of course, it is COVID times, so people are avoiding physical contact. So just COVID etiquette, always keep that in mind. When busy with an interview, try and use their name. If you are unable to, for instance, if you are busy with a panel interview and you're unable to remember the individual's name and you'd like to refer back to their question, then you can use the pronouns their, they, the plural pronouns. So to avoid re-asking for their name. But ideally, yes, you do want to know your interviewers' names, but I do understand it's difficult sometimes if you're in a panel situation. And obviously then you're nervous and, and then obviously keep in mind what not to do. Don't fidget with your cell phone, don't be late, don't do financial negotiation during your first few interviews and things like that. And then obviously research the company that you're going to have an interview with, because they will more than likely ask you, why is it that you want to work here, or if they've done a creative project that you actually took an interest in, you can mention that, and they will see that you have taken the initiative to do the research, which will show that you are willing to learn and do work outside of the office, which is obviously appealing. Okay, so last week we asked you guys to please get job applications, whether they had been filled or not. It's obviously just for hypothetical usage, and then to create 4 questions of the different types of questions. So it can be open or closed questions, situational, behavioral, etc. 4 questions that are differ from one another, and then in pairs you will interview one another, and then there will also be an observer whilst you interview one another. So 2 of the students will share the observations from the mock interview, so they will share what they observed when watching one pair interview one another. The other 2 students will share the positives, negatives, and challenges that they experienced conducting and being interviewed. And then each student must give one suggestion as to how they plan to improve on their interview skills, because that is obviously very important, and that is a great help for the future and your internship. Okay, these are just 2 links to good interviews and bad interviews. Please note that they have been dramatized. These aren't real interviews. So if you just want to get a little bit of background on good interviews and bad interviews, these are 2 pretty good links. They are just found on YouTube. Okay, and then once we've obviously reviewed the feedback from the students during their mock interviews, we will start to link linking the interviews to the theory. So specifically with observation, you will look at body confidence and etc. So you'll look at your body language, requesting for clarity, don't oversell yourself, and remain composed. Those are very important. Your body language can also be quite important and very easily overlooked. You don't want to be hunched over with both elbows on the table, not making eye contact. Those are very important things. You want to make eye contact. You want to engage physically and with your face as much as possible, especially now with masks. You need to make a conscious effort to create and possibly maintain eye contact, and that's very important. So ideally, lean back in your chair, be comfortable, sit upright. When they're speaking, lean forward to show that you are actively listening to them, etc. And then obviously engagement. Participate in meaningful and productive discussions. So, if they ask you a question, elaborate on it, build on it, start to have a technical conversation about the field that you'll be in and things like that. That's very important. It will also show that you are able to relate and have a discussion, especially if you will be dealing with customers or anything like that, or if you're in a more technical position and they speak to you about technical terms, engage with that, build on their ideas, let them build on your ideas, give suggestions and things like that, give your thoughts on things. Ask relevant and appropriate questions. So if you're unsure, ask for clarity. Obviously, they will give you an opportunity at the end of the interview to ask any follow-up questions. Okay. And then again, we did speak about dress code, so that's your appearance. So dress for the job, obviously the more formal the job role would be, you do want to dress up. If it is a little bit of more a lax approach, then you can dress a little bit down, but rather be overdressed than underdressed. And as I mentioned earlier, you can follow up with the company and just request what their dress code is. Whether it's that you call the person that called you, the person that will be interviewing you, or you can call their HR and tell them, I am coming in for an interview and I would just like to know what your dress code is, etc. And then obviously you dress uniquely to your style. There's no need to completely change the way that you dress for an interview. It does show that a little bit of individuality and things like that, but obviously please be conscious of what it is that you are putting on display. Control the narrative of your appearance. Okay. So responding to difficult questions, show that you're willing to learn when faced with a challenging question. And the second thing is attempt to understand and ask questions if they volunteer the question information. So if they ask you a challenging question and you're unsure, don't just answer it to answer it. Rather tell them that you're unsure and go from there, and then ask questions, to show that you are willing to learn, and ask them to elaborate on their question or to explain it to you or anything like that. It'll show your willingness to learn and your ability to learn, of course. Okay, so as this is the end of chapter 1, we're going to do a quick chapter recap of the lessons that we have completed. Okay, so in lesson 1, we looked at the power of personal branding, concepts of professional online identity, the importance of networking, and how to network. So we looked at how you can network face-to-face, and obviously how you can network on the multiple professional platforms such as LinkedIn and Facebook Marketplace and Biz Community. The second lesson we covered create a professional online identity and increasing employment opportunities. So that was obviously to create your LinkedIn profile and to build on it so that you're more appealing to people looking for employees, etc., and to assist with your applications. In lesson 3, we conducted the job search. We looked at the importance of a CV, and we looked at the importance of a cover letter / page. This was where we created a CV and cover page for a certain individual applying for a specific job. You did this in groups of 4 or smaller, depending on the size of the class. And then in lesson 4, we looked at the basic understanding of the interview process, different interview types, so again like panel, face-to-face, online, general interview etiquette, developing questions, so if you will be interviewing someone, and then also reviewing an interview, which is very important so that you can build on your own self-improvement and give constructive criticism to your peers in the class, and then reflecting on interviews and areas of improvement. Again, very important to build on that and to help you give constructive criticism. Okay, so in the next lesson, we'll be starting chapter 2. If you can please prepare pages 47 to 52. The lesson will be introduction to the topic of personality and a few psychological personality theories. And you will be expected to complete an online free personality test, which we will link obviously in class for your convenience. Here are the references that I've used for this lesson, and I hope that you have enjoyed this lesson.